Put us on.
I think he means.
Yeah. What was that
That's
one?
Frank Caliendo's work. That is our essence, apparently. That's who we are. So he's going to be hopefully working on that. Triggs, did you talk to him?
I did not. He sent me a DM saying I'm working on it, and then it went public, and it's a 6-second clip of him doing imitations of our faces, apparently. But I need the actual audio. I want to hear his Nate Burleson when he pontificates using a pun referencing the annexation of Puerto Rico, doing a serious conversation about Seattle's offense.
Hopefully he's working on that. Follow us at GMFB. It's time for the lead block.
Lead block.
Lead block.
Lead block.
Thanks, Caliendo, for the laughs there. Let's start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, shall we? Their squad of offensive players is very talented, of course, and some new addition. They've got the best of all time, Tom Brady. They also have, O.J. Howard, Rob Gronkowski. Tight end Cameron Brate tells us realizing the Bucs have to be the ones to teach Brady. That's what they have to do. Godwin had a similar sentiment when I talked to him a couple of weeks ago. At least this has to happen in the beginning, and it's something that they're all sort of still massaging and getting used to. Look at this.
It's a little weird now working with him at the beginning of his Bucs tenure because we're kind of teaching him our verbiage, and it's kind of a backwards way of how it's probably going to progress during the season with him kind of teaching us a lot about, the game and how he sees things. But right now it's, only a couple weeks with the Bucs, and he's trying to figure out what we call stuff. So we're kind of teaching him the offense, which is a little weird.
A little weird to teach the GOAT an old trick here. So from him on the court in The Last Dance, of course, Michael Jordan to the GOAT on the field in Tom Brady. ESPN announced a documentary feature. It's going to be called The Man in the Arena, Tom Brady, and that's coming out in 2021. Tom Brady's story, of course, isn't over yet. So let's look ahead to the challenges that our guy TB12 could potentially face this season. What do you guys think is the biggest obstacle, if you had to really narrow it down to one thing, Schrags, between right now and week one, especially after hearing what Cam Brate had to say?
The biggest obstacle is throwing with your teammates at a high school in Tampa and having NFL have to put out a statement saying it's okay. He's allowed to do that as long as they're socially distanced. Like in a typical offseason, Brady would be in the playbook, having all of his teammates with him somewhere working out, no problems. And Brady would be in the facility trying to get better as it goes. In this offseason, I think it's actually a huge obstacle. He's got to learn a new offense from Byron Leftwich, which Cameron Brate, who is a good tight end in the NFL, is saying we're teaching him. He has to get to know a new head coach in Bruce Arians, and has to get to know 51 other teammates that he has to deal with out there on the field. I think that's a major obstacle in what the current situation in the country is. It's not going to be, let's go, I've got Julian Edelman, I know exactly where I'm going to go with the ball, and everyone else is going to follow around me. Last year, when I did the Bills versus Patriots Saturday game on NFL Network, we had a chance to sit down with Tom Brady. And he said one of the frustrations of his season is that there's guys like Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Harry. These are great kids with really good potential who want to be great. You can't blame them. They were just being asked to do too much and didn't know the offense well enough yet. So his standard of excellence is up here, and he's expecting that from these guys, and they weren't there to give it to him. Well, guess what, Tom? Without an entire offseason with these guys, how do you expect all these unsung players who have never won squat in the NFL to get to this level of your expectation right out of the gates without having an offseason to work with them? I'd be shocked if Brady didn't take a bunch of these guys and take them to Montana, where he lives, out in June and July, and say, I'm putting you up in houses, you're living with us here, and we are figuring this thing out 6 feet apart, but we're going to make sure that we are on the same page. Because there are so many obstacles in the country right now with any company. I think that's going to be a major one for Brady, both mentally getting to know these guys and also physically being able to get in a rhythm with these guys on the field.
Peter, you're all over it. We can barely get through a Believe It or Not segment. It's very difficult no matter what your job is. And I'm on the same page, getting to know his teammates, but not like you might think. There's certainly a factor of, where does Mike Evans like to break off his route? And when does he drop his shoulder when he's planning off? I mean, there's all sorts of nuances. But there's also the very important intimate nuance of, like, let's just not put too fine of a cap on it, is there's a booty sweat factor here. And if you saw his center, Ryan Jensen of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this is a big deal. And this is something that goes back years for Tom Brady, having to do with teammate familiarity. Bring up the tweet from Ryan Jensen, who was one of the guys who worked out here. He's quoting Brady. He says, first you fold the towel once, then over itself again, put it down your crack, and douse it in baby powder. No more bleep sweat. That's a Tom Brady quote. And then Tom Brady replies and says, success to a 21-year career. Guys, this has been a pet peeve of Brady for decades, going back to his center, Dan Coppin in New England, who would stuff towels down the back of his game pants over and over. It's a huge deal. Last year it came up for Kirk Cousins when the Vikings drafted a rookie center, and he's like, honestly, I can't get the ball. It's World War III down there. And understanding this concept a little bit, think about Tampa Bay in September. I mean, there's a massive swamp factor that Brady is not acclimated to, and look for loose balls early if they don't get this thing cleared up.
I hear you on that. Hey, Kyle, is that fire real behind you? I hear some crackling in the background. Like, that's some real deal fire, bro. Listen.
Those are my takes, Nate.
For me, you on fire, fam. You know, what are the obstacles for Brady? Is it trying to explain what a fax machine is? Maybe a pager? Trying to explain how he used to put something called a CD in a case logic and then put those on the visor of his car and drive around. What are some obstacles? Trying to have them appreciate the value of taking Metamucil so it helps with your digestive. He's old. He's old. And I don't mean that in the sense that Brady is old, that he's not going to play well. He's just from a different generation, like literally from a different generation. And then you add on the fact that he's great. Like Peter's saying, he's great and he expects greatness. The reason I bring that up is because, one, you already have the age gap. And then two, you're known as the greatest quarterback of all times. It usually takes a few months, and I'm speaking from experience, where that shock, that stardom, that starstruck perception you have of somebody, it wears. And then you're like, okay, it's time to play football. I remember when I first met Randy Moss. I was a third-round draft pick, and I was scared, sweating. Every time I was around him, I was nervous. I was like, don't say anything stupid. Don't say anything stupid. So for the most part, I just remained quiet. And then it just took me time, a few months of us doing OTAs and getting to know each other, maybe going and grabbing lunch. And then before I knew it, I wasn't starstruck. He was just my teammate. I'm bringing all that up because Brady doesn't necessarily have that time because of the circumstances. So now you have the age gap because he's so much older. And now when his teammates meet him for the first time, they're going to be like, oh, it's Brady. And believe me, it's real. I know you guys are like, oh, they're all pro ball players. They're all making $1 million. They look at each other. No, they don't. We don't look at each other the same. Certain guys that are still playing are living legends, and they're looked at as gods of the game. I just wish they had time to kind of break that barrier down, have those icebreakers, so when they stepped on the field, they're not strangers. They're brothers.
And his age is an obstacle in and of itself, right? He turns 43 on August 3rd. Maybe their other big obstacle is the fact that they have the Saints in that division, and they take them on right there in New Orleans week 1. Now, I do Instagram live check-ins on the NFL's Instagram handle. Players stop by, chop it up a little bit. Tonight, I have Devontae Adams. Stay tuned for that. Kevin Byard stopping by as well. But yesterday, head coach of the New Orleans Saints, Sean Payton, stopped by, and he spent a long time sort of reminiscing about his playing days as a Bear, but he also talked about his memories of the Super Bowl. So this is him right now. I want you guys to see this, about the last time the Saints won in 2009 and how it stays with him, or whether it does today.
I'm going to go back to the Jordan documentary. You know, when in those basketball games and the best of fives and the best of sevens, you get the sense they're always going to arrive at the best team by the end of that. And in our postseason, which makes it very exciting, man, it's the team that plays the best in that 3-hour period.
Yeah.
Because it's just final. You know, there's not of let's regroup and get ready for game 2 or get ready, you know, and so I think in the second half, we were fortunate enough to really switch the momentum.
Do you think about the Super Bowl every day?
No.
Really?
I think about the next one.
Okay. Good answer. Yep, he talked a lot about that, of course, and thank you to him. You guys can go to @NFL on Instagram and check out more clips. We're releasing them all throughout the day. But Sean Payton, very much so. On to the next one. There's a window there with Drew Brees to win another ring, and it certainly is closing. Brees turned 41 in January. The Saints, the only team whose Super Bowl window might be shrinking as we go along here. Which team needs to treat 2020, guys, or they're not the team that's like that? There's a lot of teams that have that last shot at a Lombardi trophy sort of looming here in 2020, Schrags. Who's that team in your eyes?
Yeah, it's fascinating.